I'm Jim Check. You're watching Now Media. With me, Casey Grable, owner of Salt and Brick, Diner Deluxe, and Pretty Not Bad. And he's got some pretty bad news, though. You're going to close Salt and Brick. I believe it's on October 5th, is that? And that'll be the final day for that Salt and Brick.
Correct. Yeah, that's the last day of service. We are still going to be doing private events through the holiday season, but yeah, the last day of full service to our guests will be next Sunday.
So 7 years downtown, and also featured on a famous Canadian cooking show as well, or food show.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a great run. I mean, honestly, we purchased Salted Brick back in 2017, and my business partner and I had kind of, high hopes, obviously, but no real expectations as to where we'd live and how long it would be. And I mean, I would say, the hope would have been to make it at least 10 years. That would have been kind of the number I would have said was a big win and a big success. But the last 2 years have just been, financially punitive, and just, we just haven't been able to get back to where we were, honestly, like pre-COVID as well as like just after COVID. I think it was funny, you got through COVID and you thought nothing could be worse than COVID. And then it's like,
the punches keep coming, right? The punches keep coming, right? It just seemed like, COVID was like the ultimate punch. You thought that was the worst of it. And then obviously wildfires hurt tourism, and then just and then inflation, and then I'm sure part of that and you don't list it in your press release, but is part of it I know we did a survey or a interview with the BIA saying just the unrest, like the 67% of businesses, staff don't feel safe and all that in the downtown area as well. Has that played a factor in your decision?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a major factor. I mean, I think whenever I am in Kelowna, I kind of, really try and take a good objective view of like what's going on downtown. And, from my own opinions, like over the last 8-9 years of me living in Kelowna, I've said it's gotten progressively worse. It's also gotten displaced a little bit more. So it's not just obviously right downtown. I mean, for years, obviously, with where Salt and Brick was, we had all the homelessness on Lawrence there. So, or on Leon, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I would say like there's just I don't want to do the death by 1,000 cuts thing, but there's no doubt that there's less and less people that are comfortable coming downtown every year. There's less and less tourists that are comfortable coming to Kelowna for multiple reasons, whether that be homelessness, whether that be obviously short-term rentals. That's been a major factor. We used to do a lot of wedding catering, and August used to be obviously a great month for wedding catering, and I think it's been very positive, I guess, the last 2 years that we haven't had any major fires. But for a long time, it was like every second year you were guaranteed to have an August where if you did a wedding in Kelowna, you potentially get smoked out, right? So I think there's just so many little factors at place in a town that's already incredibly seasonal. The summer needs to be very successful to have a small independent restaurant succeed. And the last 2 summers have unfortunately not been what we hoped, and it's kind of led us to this decision.
Yeah, and you're right. The wildfires really haven't been a factor these last 2 years, although it kind of preys on people's minds from the other years when they're planning their holidays. And the short-term rentals, I know I've interviewed a few of the NDP ministers, and they're saying it's not a big factor, but I've interviewed lots of people in tourism, and they say it is a big factor. And I know like our city depends on tourism so much. And I think, like when people are looking, especially families, and that when they're looking for places to go, accommodation is a big part of that as well, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Salt and Brick, being a downtown location, obviously draws on everywhere. Diner Deluxe was a very simple and clear example of a restaurant that is in a building that was always designed to be short-term rental. And last year we experienced almost a 30% drop in total sales, and almost all of it was between May 1 and August 31. So very clearly it was related to no short-term rentals. The building above us ran, at full occupancy. every summer since its an inception, and since Diner Deluxe's inception. And then one summer we run 12% occupancy, and our sales go down by $300,000. It's significant for a small business. And yeah, I mean, I don't want this all to be about short-term rentals. There's so many different reasons, but I couldn't tell you that the information the NDP is going with is any more wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know it's like I said, tourism is a big factor for Kelowna for sure, especially like our downtown area and like down that strip, that Pandosy area, which is a beautiful area for sure. And
Yeah.
and I you see it in the cars too. Like, usually around this time of year, well, we're closing out the year, but you see a lot of red plates and Washington plates, and you just don't see it. Traffic was light this year, and I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's a good year," but you could just tell from the traffic flow it wasn't that bad, right? It just seemed really kind of like light or just average, right?
Yeah, I think the best example for us would be, like, I was probably one of the biggest proponents of that, meet me on Bernard with shutting down the main drag there. We're on the 200 block, both with Salt and Brick and with one of my previous places, Jack's. We were all about that. We thought it was going to be, an amazing thing for downtown Kelowna, and all the restaurants on the 200 and 300 block would thrive from it. And, this year we didn't even participate in the program at Salt and Brick. That's the level of decrease in volume that we've experienced over the last 3 or 4 years. Versus year one of that program, we were significantly busier. We would open that extended patio almost 7 days a week. So yeah, for us to decide not even to participate in the program this year, really, to me, I think shows what we've seen happen with the volume downtown over the last 2 summers, especially.
And how are the other 2 children doing in your in your basket there? You've got the 3 restaurants, and they're kind of in different locations. And that, does the location play a bit in that, or?
Yeah, I think no doubt, and I think that was partly the strategy behind not having everything be on the 200 block in Bernard, and why we tried to diversify in terms of throughout the downtown type area. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Diner Deluxe was drastically affected by short-term rental changes last year. This year, at least, our building above us was able to run at full occupancy with long-term rentals. So we did, and we have some good new neighbors in that building. So yeah, we saw some positivity there. And then the other one, pretty not bad, which is on Clement. It's one of those ones where, I love sports. We opened a sports bar. One thing about sports, there's not very many good ones that people will come watch in July and August. So we tried something different this year with a tiki bar pop-up, and I'll say we'll probably never do that again. But a good learning, a good lesson. And, I think part of entrepreneurship and being a restaurateur, is just trying different things and thinking outside the box, and, trying to do something to differentiate yourself from the rest. And so that's where I'm always proud of my team when it's like, okay, hey, let's try something different. Let's see let's zig when someone else zags, and see what the end result is. So, I would say on our side, the hope is that, we continue to have those 2 restaurants thrive, and grow over the years to come. Both those restaurants had really tough 2024s as well. But 2025 has been better for both of them, whereas Salt and Brick didn't see that bounce back for us.
These all have Calgary counterparts? Are those your counterparts, or are these just franchises you bought, or?
No, so yeah, I wear many hats. One of them is to oversee another set of brands, and one of those brands ended up deciding that we had this empty space, and I pitched my business partner, which is completely separate from my Kelowna entities, on doing a Salt and Brick. We kind of went back and forth on it for a while, and then we finally were like, okay, let's do it. We love Salt and Brick, and let's see what we can do in a bigger city with less seasonality in a larger space. And so that's the positive, I would say, and something that I can definitely helps me sleep better at night when I'm closing one of my babies. Is that we do have a beautiful spot in Calgary that's doing very, very well, and you can still get the Brussels sprouts there that were featured on that the show that you mentioned previously.
And then Diner Deluxe is in Calgary too, isn't it?
Yeah, Diner Deluxe is in Calgary. So the founders of that, well, not the founders, but the gentlemen who've been running that brand for years are partners in the Kelowna location as well.
I know, because my daughter lives in Caban now, and she's so excited because like she's from Calgary, and she was
Nice.
at the Diner Deluxe, and pretty not bad. That's also in Calgary, isn't it? There's a pretty not
No,
bad.
that's the there's a place in Calgary that's got a similarly
Mm,
funny, innuendo, not innuendo, but
Pretty
unique
not
name.
bad
It's called
pizza, I think, right? Yeah.
yeah, actually pretty good is what they're called, and
Oh, there
they're
you go. Yeah,
awesome. They're
yeah, yeah.
friends of ours, and they do a really great job. And they definitely led the way in terms of having a unique name that some people
Yeah.
triple check before they actually believe it's the right
Yeah.
name. But yeah, I mean, I think that you know there's a lot for me, in terms of having restaurants and bars kind of across the country. One of the other brands we have has locations in Vancouver and Toronto and Edmonton as well. And there's so many different economic factors at play. And I will say, like, Kelowna, I will always go down as the most challenging place that I've ever tried to operate a business. It's
Is
just
that
like it is a hard market to be successful long term.
is that the seasonality? That's one of the big factors in that.
Yeah, you take the seasonality and then you layer in all these other factors we talked about, where you know that you need to make, let's call it 70% of your revenue almost from May to end of September. And it's not that balanced. Whereas in some of those other markets, I would say I can, 10 months of the year are strong and 2 months of the year are a little bit slower, and in Kelowna is just the opposite. And, when I started way back, 8 years ago in Kelowna with Salt and Brick, I was like, oh, this is perfect. My other restaurants slow down in the summer. This one ramps up in the summer. But just unfortunately just hasn't ramped up the way that it used to. And again, I know there's some places that are thriving in downtown Kelowna as well. So I'm definitely one of those people who's very pragmatic and has to look at it and go, like, there are all other factors at play. And sometimes after 7-8 years in operation, you need to make a change. You can't continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect the same result and the positive result that maybe we saw in the first 5+ years.
What needs to change for business to be a restaurant to be successful downtown in Kelowna here?
I mean, I think there's a multitude, but I mean, like, right off the bat, the two easy ones are the ones we've kind of talked about. I think, it'd be great to see an adjustment and a change in short-term rentals. I think that would make a change in the summertime, especially with large groups. I feel like I hear all the time from friends of mine from Alberta that are like, hey, we used to come to Kelowna, but it doesn't make sense when we have to, get hotel rooms, and the Grand is kind of the only option, and, the price point and all that. So they've chosen to go elsewhere. So I do think that, to get the summer back up to where it needs to be, I think that's a big one. I think secondarily, yeah, like the homelessness, issues that we have, and trying to make Bernard feel safe, open, from first thing in the morning till later at night is a big one. And then just overall, just economic factors at play, like obviously like a strong, macro economy, and like a strong economy throughout Canada is going to be what, puts more disposable income in people's pockets. And I think that like this summer, I think we all kind of hoped in the Okanagan that we'd see that benefit from the tariffs, and maybe a little bit of the negative sentiment towards traveling to the U.S. And I personally, don't believe we saw that. I don't think that was the reason that the businesses that did a little bit better this year than last year were better. So yeah, I think there's a lot of factors at play. And yeah, I mean, 2 years in a row without any major fires, and then I know that there's a small one right now in the Peachland area, I believe, but 2 summers in a row without fires is a good thing. Like, I think that the more summers in a row that Kelowna can go without, a major issue, like, it just puts things in the past a little bit more. And I really believe all those factors at play are going to be what drives the summer volume to get back to what it was. Kelowna's still the most beautiful place in Canada, in my opinion. Like, especially like this time of year in September, I just, like, there's nothing can beat Kelowna in September, in my opinion.
I do think Kelowna should be. I mean, even the NDP candidate that ran here, Loyal Wooldridge, the councillor, said there needs to be a made in Kelowna solution, because they have to recognize that Kelowna is like a tourism town. That's a big factor for Kelowna, is tourism, right? Because I mean, you look out the shot behind me. That's our live shot. I mean, that's how beautiful it is, and the big lake and that, right? So it is an attraction, but it's not the only attraction, right? So we do lose out if we don't have that, like short-term rentals and other things that make it attractive for people to come, especially with families or large groups, like you say.
Yeah, I think one of the sad parts for me, again, in closing Salt and Brick is just recognizing that, the it was a fun fight to be the little guy and to have a 952 square foot restaurant and to try and make that work. It was something I was very proud of and still am proud of. That's not going to change. I think there's obviously a ton of stats out there about the restaurant industry and how hard it is, and I'm proud that we made it. 8 years, and I think that we've had so many amazing, talented people, especially on the culinary side, work with us that have gone on to bigger and better things as well. That I'll always be able to take those fond memories of that. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea of a downtown core filled with small independent restaurants. Like that's I think restaurants truly are the lifeblood of a city at times.
Again, for personal experience, I've frequented all three of those, and they're all great food. So, I mean, the food was great, and the locations, obviously, spreading them out was great. And my daughter's like a huge fan of Diner Deluxe. Like she was so excited to see it, right? So a little bit of Calgary came to her. But yeah, like it's tough. I know like a lot of business is suffering right now, and the kind of like the macro environment in British Columbia, a lot tougher than it is in Alberta right now. And, higher taxation, different things like that, and businesses struggling. Obviously, if the money gets tighter too, obviously it gets tougher for people to go out and spend as well, right? When you're counting on some of that local traffic as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, doing business in BC has been an interesting endeavor for me, and I've gotten enough experience over the last 8 years with various enterprises to know that it can be successful. You can make it work, but the prices at our Alberta restaurants and bars aren't vastly different than our prices in BC, but our minimum wage is $3 plus more in BC. Paid sick days. There's just there's a whole bunch stat days that don't exist in other provinces that do exist in BC that are paid stats for us. The not just restaurant business. Small retail obviously gets affected by that. There's lots of places that get affected by that, and when it's cheaper to close than be open, like that's generally not a good sign for a business.
When one business is eating the other business, then you got to make a decision, right? So, and that's the tough part.
And that can be like again, I think one thing I've thought about a lot is like we could have made this decision a year ago, and again, one thing I'm very proud of is that we had a really great team and we had some really awesome people, and I really wanted to give Salt and Brick a chance to be successful again and to be back to that level. And it wasn't the best financial decision to go for another full year, but I'm really proud that we did. And again, the restaurant right now, like the two gentlemen that I have in that kitchen are incredible, and I'm so proud of what they put forth every day, as well as the rest of the team. So definitely going out on a high note, I'll tell you that.
So staffing, are they going to just get moved to other locations, or are some of them going to face layoffs?
No, I don't think anyone's going to get laid off. I mean, the timing obviously is that this is when things slow down anyways. And a lot of our staff that were, hired for a busy summer season, we didn't have quite the expectation for the level of busy summer, but most of that happens like natural attrition in the Okanagan, I find. So I think we've kind of got, I don't think anyone's going to be out of work unless they choose to be out of work after this. The two chefs I mentioned, they've got a good landing place for themselves. And then, our front of house staff, for the most part, are all capable of either working at any of our restaurants or easily finding a job somewhere else because they're very talented. So that's another positive out of this is, that nobody's going to be out of work out of this. And I really hope that we're going to put someone new and amazing in that spot. Like, that there is a very small chance that I would reopen a new concept in the spring in that space, but the more likely scenario is that we're going to find a new awesome tenant for that space that's going to hopefully do something even better than what Salt and Brick was, and really move the Okanagan culinary scene and the Okanagan restaurant scene forward.
Well, I do thank you for your time. Any closing thoughts, Casey, or?
No, I'm just really appreciative of the people that did walk through those doors, yourself included, over the years. I think, at the end of the day, like, small restaurants are just, they're truly reliant on every customer. I can't make that statement clear enough that every customer counts for a small business and a small restaurant. So truly appreciate everyone who gave us a chance, and especially the ones who kept coming back. Those people made it all worthwhile for all of us. So we'll miss serving people on Bernard, but hopefully we'll still see them at the other two Kelowna restaurants, and then even at Salt and Brick in Calgary.
It's a true entrepreneur when you open a restaurant. I grew up in that industry. Mom and Dad both ran some restaurants and all that stuff. And I think one of my first jobs was a ceramics and silver technician, a dishwasher in a restaurant. I glorified the name.
I've never heard it. I've never heard it described that way.
Yeah, a dishwasher, and I think I worked my way up to I got poached later on for a chef in another restaurant, but that was doing different things. You move your way up from like prep cook, short order cook to grill cook, and all those things, right? And move your way through the system. But yeah, it's a different world, right? Like, but it's a true grit for sure, right? There's a name for your next restaurant, True Grit.
I like it. Resiliency and grit are definitely restaurateur, entrepreneur terms for sure. And I mean, I didn't have quite my actually very first restaurant job was in the dish pit in a restaurant in Leduc, Alberta. I lasted one day. I'm by no means the reason I can tell you how great my chefs are is because I am not a chef at all, but I eat at a lot of restaurants. And the quality is amazing. But yeah, I think my wife would tell you I've probably cooked dinner 3 times in the last 8 years. So it's an easy excuse when you can say, hey, let's just go to one of our restaurants. So I might have to start cooking more dinners now.
And when I started cooking, I think I was 3 weeks in the dish pit there as the silver and ceramics technician, and the boss came by and he said, hey, the cook didn't show up. You want to do that? Like the prep cook? I'm just like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, you take that chance. As soon as you can get out of that dish pit, you get out.
My hands are turning black from the bleach. I had to get out. Anyway, I do thank you for your time, Casey, and wish you luck with Diner Deluxe. And I'm sure I'll see you there with my daughter. She was going to drag me in there a few times, I'm sure. And I love Pretty Not Bad as well. So, all right.
Hopefully Cheers. We'll see them both. So thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
And thank you for watching No Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside.